This is The Unstarving Musician. I am Rabonzo, and this is my podcast. It features conversations with independent music artists and industry professionals with occasional special topic episodes by yours truly. I'm doing more of that lately. It's a glimpse into the minds of my varied guests and lots of things I read about and do, all intended to help independent music artists better understand the marketing, business, and creative processes that empower us to do more of what we love, and that's make music. Welcome and thank you for tuning in. Chris Taylor is my guest in this episode. He is a creative machine. Chris has appeared in two previous episodes, 65 and 97. I invited him back for what I'm informally calling a storyteller series, which is having guests back on who had memorable stories to share when they spoke with me for the podcast. He's working on releasing a new collection of music. I got a sneak preview and I love it. Chris is excited about it. I'm excited for him. We talk about comparing ourselves to others, an energy-giving experience that occurred for him, to him, opening for Sixpence None the Richer, and trusting our instincts, and his new music, and more. Here's me talking with Chris Taylor.
A lot of times when I'm talking to someone such as yourself or another, someone asking about or inquiring about music, I never, I'm always moving forward to the next thing. And so it's hard for me to really reflect on even what I've just done, musically speaking, because my brain's just it's always just chasing after the next thing, and so, yeah, I'm glad I've made sense to you. Or,
Well,
you know
you're
what I
always
mean?
in creative mode, so I can see
Yeah,
how that would be or be a bit of a dilemma sometimes.
for sure.
Well, I remember a couple things. Let me start with that.
Yeah,
I remember record burnings, which you talk about in your Instagram story thing that you just created, your My Story thing, which I want to
yeah.
talk about in a minute. And I don't recall, but we may have talked about it, but you did talk about it in your little story series on Instagram. Um, I don't recall talking about an abusive relationship with your father. However, I think now that I'm saying that, I think I recall, which would connect us to the record burnings, that it was a very religious upbringing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fortunate to be able to kind of laugh at a lot of it now.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of healing in my own personal life. And, y- you know, for me, I think as soon as I started to play music, create art, get out into the world, travel, meet different people of all kinds and walks of what life and everything, I was that was a healing for me. It was like, oh, I wasn't trapped in my father's house under my father's shadow for a long period of time. So I feel like now, all these years later, I look back at that kid, and I don't I don't like to play the victim card, and I'm not judging anybody who does, but I could easily go, oh, I was bullied all through grade school, and then at 15 years old, I moved to Texas and lived with my father, and on one hand, he was this super religious, and there was lots of church and God is love, and it was the 80s, and Christianity was filled with fear, and anything that wasn't modern congregation sing along music was of the devil. And it was this whole, I mean, it still might be, I don't know, I haven't paid much attention to it lately, but and so I look back at that kid and I'm like, oh man, this poor kid went through the ringer when it came to that. But I don't know, man. I think I've also been, to use a very churchy phrase, I've been blessed with a warped sense of humor that I that has kind of saved me for a lot of saved me from a lot of depression, really, and saved me from a lot of like woe is me moments. And I'm able to kind of look at my life and no real regrets. I'm grateful for the way it was because all of it helped shape me to be who I am now, which not isn't necessarily the greatest guy in the world, but I'm like, hey, I like the me that I've turned out to be, you know. So yeah, man, I'm hanging in.
Well, good. Yeah, I'd assumed based on past conversations and just sort of watching from afar occasionally that you're pretty well adjusted in spite of it all. So that's a bonus. Are you still in San Antonio, or are
I
you?
am.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'm still here in San Antonio. I love this city. I still, I don't get a chance to travel as much these days, but I like having a home base here. And then if I need to be, I have plenty of friends in Nashville and plenty of friends, in other areas. And if I need to be there, I'm able to get there. So, yeah, yeah, this is sort of my sweet spot for the moment.
Is that in Texas where you lived with your father in San Antonio?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
born and raised in upstate New York, skipping rocks into Lake Ontario. That was most of my days were either spent there or my sister managed a movie theater, my older sister. So it was a really cool, like built in I think the 40s, and it was this great vibey little movie theater that had a downstairs screen and an upstairs screen. And I'd spend most of my time eating popcorn and hanging out. All throughout the 70s and early 80s, I was watching movies for free. So think about all those great movies that came out during that time. And I was I was there. So yanked from that uh, whole vibe into San Antonio, Texas, to live with a man I never really knew at the age of 15. That was a wild and surreal experience.
Hmm. Are you still close with your sister?
Yeah, we sure are. Matter of fact, my I have a family that was kind of fractured and split. So when I grew up, I didn't really know a lot of the people in my family, but I had a really close connection with my mom and my sister. And my mom passed away back in 2015, and my sister and I are still very close. We talk quite a bit, and yeah, yeah, it's still great to be connected to her. And her son Jeff is also a musician, and he's amazing. He's like 6 years younger than me,
Hmm.
and a killer guitar player and beautiful singer and great harmony singer. Just super super talented. So I'm really glad that we've stayed connected all these years.
That's cool. Why did your mom or why did you end up going to Texas to be with your dad that you didn't know? I don't remember
Well,
that. We might have talked about it, but I don't remember.
no, that's all right. The short version is, you know, what was told to me at 15 years old was, hey, do you want to go to Texas to visit your father for like a summer? Just spend the summer with your dad, get to know him, that kind of thing. And I was like, I kind of got the vibe that my mother and my father, like obviously they were divorced when I was, a young kid. So I didn't, I think when I was 2 years old. With that said, I got the sense that my mother and father did not like each other at all. And I was just going, do I really, want to put myself in that position? But at the same time, I'm kind of like, well, I would love to know who my father is. And so anyway, I thought, well, it'll just be for the summer. Well, after I got to Texas and uh, days became weeks and weeks became months, and I was about to start a school year there, and I'm like, what am I? I thought I was just going to be here for the summer. Well, it turns out my mother really couldn't afford me. She was falling on rough times, and I was the last child that she had. She had, I think, six kids, and I was the last in line. And nobody really wanted to tell me that. Nobody wanted to come out and say, "Oh, Chris, we just couldn't afford to have you here. Mom's going through some tough times or whatever." So it was a real like shock to my system to go. wait, you mean I'm not going back home? Like, like all my friends, like, what is going on here? So it was and then to be thrust into the mid 80s church world of Christianity.
In
That was,
Texas, no less.
yeah, yeah. I knew nothing about the Bible Belt until it was choking me to death. So it was crazy. I mean, funny enough, I will say this, even though I was going through such a traumatic time, you know, doing all of a sudden going from playing stickball and hanging out at pizza parlors, checking out the girls, wishing they would come up and talk to me, and watching movies endlessly, to all of a sudden in this suction world of church where everything had to be done with church people and the church youth group, and everything was about that. There was some really beautiful moments that I still hang on to this very day. But overall, I just sort of cut ties with it years ago and
Hmm.
decided this is all this was all forced on me. And I'm grateful for some of the beautiful moments, but there was just so much twisted craziness at the same time. I decided it was time for me to let it go, to let it all go.
Sure. Well, thankfully there were some good moments to remember. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. There's still, some great friendships came out of that time, and really cool memories of me opening my heart up to something bigger than just myself.
Hmm.
And even though I don't know if I subscribe to Christianity as like the whole ticket, especially these days, I don't even know what it is anymore. Like I just don't want anything to do with the label or the whole bit. But there's something beautiful about uh, the story of love that runs through um, the figure of Christ. I'll just say that there's something beautiful about it, but it gets so weird and twisted and warped depending on who's delivering that message or whatever. And so I'm still fascinated by those kinds of things. And there's something that doesn't allow me to throw the baby Jesus out with the bathwater. You know what I mean? Um, I do, but I just don't subscribe to the like. I haven't been to church in like 13 years, or I haven't really lived that life. I've just decided if there is a God and that God created me, then I'm just going to live my life, and that is my way of giving thanks back to the God who created me. Like, hey, you created me, so I'm just going to live, and I'm going to create just like you created. I'm going to create. And it may not be very religious stuff, but it is true it is authentic, and it's 100% me. So I feel like that should be enough.
Well, yeah, and gosh, you are so creative. That's a nice way to channel the good that came from that part of your life.
Thanks, man.
Hmm. Why did you do the My Story project on Instagram? It's lovely, by the way. And just curious if there was something that yeah inspired or prompted you to do it.
All right, I'll let you know. I'll let you know because you know how it is when you're watching a great documentary, a music documentary of one of your favorite artists or something like that, and some of them are done really, really well, and others maybe not so well. But I remember watching a few documentaries and just thinking to myself, you know, these artists, they've made it. They've how would I say this? There was a light that was shined on them enough for with enough people in the world to know who they were. Uh, and they've succeeded, and sometimes they've succeeded and went to the highest highs and came crashing down to the lowest lows. Um, there's a great documentary about Colin Hay, the lead singer for Men at Work,
I've not seen
and
that, but he's a wonderful artist.
oh my, I loved Men at Work and I still love Men at Work, but I loved them when they first came out. And when it was called "Waiting for My Real Life to Begin," I think is the name of he's got a song title, and that's the name of the documentary. But after I watched this documentary, I just fell in love with them all over again. So with that said, there was a little bit of ego involved, and I thought, well, I know no one's going to make a documentary of me, and who would want to watch a documentary of a guy who's got 30 albums or so and has never made it? Like no one knows who the heck he is even now. As some of his friends don't even know who he is, so I'm like, what if I just told my own little story? But instead of making some long documentary, I just do it in these little bite-sized pieces that people might be able to pay attention to, and maybe their attention span would last 4 to 6 minutes, or whatever it may be. So that was sort of the thing, and I don't know what it is. It's the same urge in me that wants to write a book, not necessarily about my life, but I want to do a book with music, with art and a story, and maybe even music with it. I haven't. I've just got ideas for that, but I'm like, I don't know what is it that compels me to want to be heard. I don't know if it's that little child in me that wants to be heard, and the 55-year-old is still fighting against it, going like, who cares? What does it matter if you're heard or not? What is the big deal? So I started with these little tiny drops of my story, parts one. I think I got a 4-part thing so far. So yeah, that's what it all. I think it's just a little bit of ego mixed with a little bit of creativity. Saying here, I want to tell my story so that maybe I can leave something behind for whoever is interested.
Inspired in part by the Colin Hay documentary.
Yeah, yeah, and any of those great documentaries on music, like my brain won't let me think of any others right now, of course, but that Colin Hay really just was something to watch. I've seen it several times now. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think of one like the I'll be surprised watching some that like I know this artist was important even though they weren't my favorite, and so often those are great stories. I mean, I certainly love hearing some of these people who weren't necessarily my my favorite artists, but I know how important they are in pop culture, and I'll listen to
Yeah,
interviews
yeah,
of them on podcasts, and I'm like, that was so educational. Not just about their story though; it's about like what drives them, you know?
exactly. Yeah, I don't even have to see. Yeah, some of these stories, I don't even have to love the band or love the artist, but I tend to have more respect for their journey and have more empathy for them. I think, if you know they have risen and fallen, and um I don't know. I love to soak up other people's journeys, whether it's their musical or uh just their life. Sometimes just watching a documentary about someone I never knew about and just realize that the world is a much bigger place, and there are all sorts of people doing all sorts of things. And yeah, and I'm fascinated by that kind of stuff.
Well, you did a good job with the Instagram series. I only saw 3 parts. I'll have to look and see if I see a fourth one, or maybe you.
There's a fourth one on YouTube. I just don't
Okay,
I don't think I put it up on Instagram yet. So yeah,
I'll look for it on YouTube.
awesome.
Yeah, and the timing was funny because I stopped doing interviews. Like I was doing interviews exclusively for the podcast, unless I just didn't have one going. But then I got to a point where I just had I was turning people down or asking them to get on a list, and I would look at their stuff later, and then sometimes from PR people. But I took a break from the podcast. Maybe I think it might have been about 3 months when I did 300 episodes. And since I've started back, I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do interviews at least for a little while. And then very quickly though, I thought I'm going to do some,
Hmm.
but I'm not really sure who. Maybe it'll just be like people that I think what I've resolved to do is try and do it with people that I'm just really have some personal interest in, like yourself, because we've spoken before. There's a lot, and there's a lot of others. For anybody who's been on the podcast that might listen to this, but there's been a lot of others too. But and then maybe people that are sort of at the extreme ends of like maybe occasionally, I'll get a pitch for someone who's actually had some celebrity, and or if I find someone that's really on the other end of perhaps obscurity but super talented that I could get an opportunity to talk to, that might be
Yeah.
pretty fun. But I've mostly just been doing stuff, shorter episodes, but things to try and help musicians who are somewhere at the beginning or still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, and that's awesome. I mean, congratulations on 300 episodes and still counting. That's remarkable that you have the stamina to do that, and and that you are shining a light on so many different types of singer-songwriters, musicians of all kinds. I think it's really, really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. Of all the things that I tried to celebrate a little, that was one of the. I'm pretty bad about not like letting myself celebrate accomplishments, but when I
Yeah,
got
yeah,
to 300 episodes, I'm like, that's a pretty big deal.
for sure. Most definitely.
Even though I know there are people that have done 1,000 or more, but those guys have been at it a while and they, publish with intense frequency. It's a trip.
Yeah, yeah. And you know how it is. You can't really compare yourself. I mean, it's like you're doing your thing. And the minute you start to look over the fence and see what somebody else is doing, and you realize, oh, they're way ahead of the game, or, you come to your own conclusions.
Hmm.
It's the same thing with me. It's like the worst is like when you finish an album and you're super excited about it and then like you turn on the radio or you're listening to Spotify or whatever it is, and all of a sudden you hear something that seems like it just blows your creation out of the water, and then you sort of sends me into a tailspin of like I got it all wrong. I should have, the mixes are wrong. Let's go back. The song. I got to change the lyrics. I got to do. And yeah, you just have to trust in your own journey, and musically speaking and artistically speaking, I have to just continue to not worry about what everybody else is doing, just continue to follow my own little journey and be appreciative of it.
I didn't make the time to go back and listen to our conversations either, but I looked at some notes and you mentioned this in one of our conversations that, how important it was not to compare yourself to others. And it is like really sound, sound advice. And, I think we all catch ourselves doing it from time to time. I certainly do, but I do it so much less than I used to. I used to have this kind of streak of envy and jealousy all the time that I think I've finally learned to let go of and realize what I've got going. So it's, I'm all good now.
Yeah, it's and I do it, we all, like you said, I still do it. And it's how fast you can catch yourself and then sort of change your perspective. A couple of weeks ago I did a show. I was asked by a band called Sixpence on the Richer to open up a show in Dallas. And of course, I love those guys. We've been friends for a really long time, and they have a brand new EP out, and they're making a big splash with it. And
Awesome.
the room was packed, and it was just me and a guitar opening for them. And I walked out onto a stage, realizing that nobody in the room knew who I was, or very few people knew who I was, and it was this exhilarating feeling uh to one not have any expectations. And I've opened a lot of shows for a lot of different artists before, and sometimes you do a show and afterwards everyone comes up to you and goes like, hey, you were great, and then they would all like pass by your merch table and go buy the the band stuff that they came to see,
Right.
and you would just be like, all right. And after a bunch of pats in the back and hey, good job, you're just kind of like, all right. And then you're driving home and you're like, what was all that about? I why did I do that? It was, what was the purpose of me being there? Like they didn't need me to be there. And so the Sixpence show, I was kind of expecting the same thing. Just because of my past experiences, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to be this opener, and then after the show, I'll either one be kind of forgotten about because I know Sixpence is going to put on an amazing show, and it's not even a woe is me. I'm not trying to say like, oh, I'll be forgotten about, like I'm not good, or I'm not trying to say that. I'm just going to say like, hey, it's easy to forget about that a guy on acoustic guitar when you have this amazing band that you came to see. Uh, and what I found was this: I was completely wrong from the very beginning. When I started, you could hear a pin drop, and in between every song, I only did like 4 songs, and in
Wow.
between every song, it was like this gorgeous wave of applause, and I just immediately felt the love in the room. It was like it was a without anybody having to say anything. It was, I can't explain it other than like I could literally feel the love. And afterwards, after the show, tons of people came and bought the vinyl, and bought I had like these hand painted art prints that I brought, and I sold a ton of those. And it wasn't even really about like the money, because the money, no matter how much you make, it always disappears. It always goes to either pay the bills, and then you're left with just the experience. Like that's really what it is for me
Hmm.
anyway.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, I was left with an experience that surprised me, and it made me fall in love with like, why do I do this in the first place? Oh, because and it goes back to trusting in your songs. Like they told me, hey, you got 20 minutes, the 20-minute set. So I'm like, perfect. I'm just going to do these 4 songs. It might have been 15 minutes or 18 minutes. I don't know. But I just felt like these 4 tell the whole story for tonight. Like it doesn't, I don't need to cram a fifth one in. And it was this beautiful reminder to me that like, that, oh, if you're faithful to the writing of the song and you see it through, no matter how much you think it could be better, or you're not as good as the next guy or the next girl that is about to take the stage, or whatever it is, whatever tricks your mind plays on you during the whole process of creativity, if you can dodge as many landmines as you possibly can, and just trust in your own instincts, trust that information that is coming into your brain that says, here, write this next lyric, or play this next chord, or follow it through. And then you take those songs to a stage and you play them in their most basic form. I don't have a cool drummer behind me keeping a killer beat. I've got no, even though I hear a cello orchestra in my head, nobody else hears it. And it's just me and the guitar. And the fact that those 4 simple songs connected so much with those folks on that night was magical. And you're like, and that to me was the drug worth chasing after, more than alcohol or drugs. Like that was the drug. And you're like, how do I get that all the time? I don't know, but I'll take it when I can get it, and I'll be grateful for it when it happens.
That's so nice. Where did you guys play in Dallas?
We played at a really cool theater called the Kessler
Okay.
in Dallas, and it was great. It had like really great seating, and it had a balcony seating, and so to look up and see people in the balcony, it was just like, oh, this is beautiful. Such a cool venue.
How many did it seat?
I should know the answer to this, but I do not.
Sounds like it was probably at least seemed like a pretty big crowd.
Yeah, the place was packed. It was full. And Sixpence put on a great show. A lot of people know them for a couple of tunes, the Kiss Me, obviously, and then
Mhm.
There She Goes, which they cover the laws. But they've got this whole brand new record out, and it's just it's a band. It's got the power of a band behind it. Lee is a great lead singer, and she's still got that sweetness in her voice, but this feels more like a rockin' band kind of a vibe. And I think it'll surprise a lot of people who are casually acquainted with them, and it will confound people that go, oh, I only know them from Kiss Me. It's like, wow, this is definitely not Kiss Me. uh so yeah, it was really cool to see the place come alive for them as well.
That's cool. Tell me about, I didn't get a chance to listen to your new music. I don't think I knew about it until this afternoon, but I am going to listen to it. Thank you for giving me the preview or whatever you sent me
Yeah,
to
yeah.
listen to, but tell me about it.
So for the last 5 years, I've been slowly and surely, but surely, working on an album called "I Carry the Flame," and it is, I'd started it here at the house, and I just thought it was just going to be another kind of little intimate homemade record, literally making it in my house. And I had finished maybe 6 or 7 songs, and I brought it to my friend Chris because I was gonna have him come over and play drums. And after a couple of days, he called me back and he's like, "Dude, I I want to play drums on this record, but there's no way I'm just gonna bring like a kick and a snare over to your house because we would just set up in my living room. I only have a couple of mics, so I'm like, yeah, just do like a kick and a snare thing, and maybe we can overdub a cymbal, or we were gonna like kind of creatively figure out how to record the drums in a in a in a way that is probably the wrong way to record drums. And so he was like, dude, I have to record my full drum kit, and we have to go into a recording studio. And so he decided he was going to basically pay for this record to be made. And so I was like, okay. It went from being this very intimate sounding record to uh this incredibly gorgeous, vibey, beautiful record. Because, and I can say that because so many amazing people decided they wanted to be a part of it. And I'm just super, super grateful. So, it's hard to talk about music that no one's ever heard before, but um, I call it a nighttime record, because it's super vibey. It's like something you want to listen to in the car when you're driving around at night. And it's got Matt Slocum from Sixpence is playing cellos and some guitars. Chris Dodds is rocking his full drum kit. Um, it's got guys I've played with for a long, long time. Justin Schneider playing the bass. He plays an 8 string bass, but it's if you did not know he was playing an 8 string bass, you couldn't tell. It's just that he's super melodic,
Mhm.
and he plays it very tastefully. He's not going all over the place. Um, and my friend Mitchell Connell plays some guitar. I play guitar on it. And the songs are just exactly it's like we've really um stuck to the vision on this record. There are 12 songs, and they're exactly what I want to say, the way I want it to be said. And it's gorgeous.
And when will it be released?
I'm trying to get it out before Christmas. It's it's all that has to be done now is to get it mastered, and then put out. I don't even know how I'm going to put it out. It's like I like the idea of having a physical, something in my hands to say, look, I made this thing, here it is. But I can't figure out in this crazy day and age if I should just make a t-shirt instead. Like, here, go listen to my music online, but buy the t-shirt or something. Like, I just don't know what I want to do about that. um I'm not concerned about making money off of the music as much as I just want people to hear it.
Yeah.
And I'll figure out other ways to pay the bills.
Well, you're still playing gigs, right?
Still playing gigs. As of last October, I landed a job about actually a year ago, last October, in a hospital. So I've been working in the sub levels of a hospital for the last year, and so that's been my main income. And then I've been able to be a little bit more selective on what gigs I want to play, so I'm not just taking every background music and wallpaper music gig that comes down the pipe just to like pay the electricity bill.
Right. That's nice.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely.
That is nice. Well, I look forward to hearing it, listening to it. I really appreciate that you shared it with me. And man, it sounds like things worked out really well for it unexpectedly. Just
Yeah,
will turn into something bigger than you thought, really.
most definitely. I never thought I'd have the patience to spend 5 years making a record, but it was mainly because we would go into the studio, for maybe 3 days out of the month, and then we just sit with it for a couple of months, and then we take another 3 or 4 days and go back in again. And it wasn't for lack of ideas. It was we had way too many, but we wanted to make sure we had all the right things going on. And some surprising people came and wanted to be a part of it. Jessie Green is this. She plays violin, and she plays everybody from the Foo Fighters to Pink to Ben Harper.
Oh,
And
nice.
I contacted her on Instagram, I think, and just reached out to her and sent her the stuff. And I said, "Would you be up for playing?" And she ended up playing on three of the songs. So it's just super cool. You know, she's the only one on the record that I didn't know ahead of time. I just kind of like found her fascinating and really wanted her energy and her spirit on the album. And yeah, she's something else.
Nice. I was gonna say, if you're still gigging, you can certainly hawk some vinyl out there, and
Most definitely. Yeah, yeah.
that's great. Well, I think just in the last 3 months, everyone was saying still saying to release singles, which doesn't mean you can't press vinyl, but I don't know. Everyone's concerned about attention span, which is understandable. But yeah, man, I wish you the best of luck with getting it out into the world and sharing it. I guess that's the most important thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm still the album guy. I'm like, I always compare it to like, look, if you're going to sit down and watch a movie, do you press pause every 5 minutes to go do something and then come back and then press play again? Like, that's not how I watch a movie. I'm in it. I want to watch a movie. And so the same thing applies to me. Like when I want to hear an album, I want to hear it from start to finish. I don't want to press pause and walk away from it for 20 minutes. I know not everybody has that kind of time, but I make that kind of time for music I really love. And I'm hoping, I know it's a pipe dream, but I'm hoping that some people will actually press play and go, "Oh, this is different and this is cool." And they want to spend, 45 minutes with it and be like, "Wow, that was something else. I might want to do that again sometime."
I think you need to appeal to people who are into doing mushrooms and just sitting down and relaxing, smoking some weed, because
Yeah.
nobody will sit. The music listening experience has changed so much. It's like people are listening to it when they do things all the time now. But there are some people out there. There's a niche audience who will sit and listen to an album, especially if they have a record player, right?
Yeah, yeah. I know. I'm of that old school ilk, I guess. And I totally realize it's the TikTok world now. Like I'm not oblivious to that fact, but there's something like I may end up putting bits and pieces on TikTok or on Instagram or whatever else comes down the way.
Hmm.
But I hope to draw people into the bigger experience if they choose to go. And if not, hey, no big deal. You spend 13 seconds with me. Maybe I should just be grateful for your 13 seconds.
Right. I mean, and there are people who supposedly are trying to legitimately unplug or be more analog in the world, and maybe those are the people too. I don't know.
Yeah, it's anybody's guess, but I'm just grateful to have made the record. I mean, to me, the success is holy crap, this thing's done. This is something that I can be grateful for and be happy about making. And the rest is not really up to me. It's to me, it's like this was my act of devotion in creating it. And the rest, I'll let the wind blow the rest wherever it wants to.
That's uniquely you. I think that's one of the appeals of talking to you and thinking about being around you, and probably for those who get to be around you, for the part of the appeal of being around you.
Super cool, man. I appreciate that.
Of course. Hey, man, it was really good to catch up. I'm excited to put this out into the podcast airwaves and share it with people and reacquaint them or acquaint them for the first time with our first two conversations. They were both really good. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. And for anybody who's still listening to this, thank you for that. Thank you. Even if you never hear my music and you just want to hear me talking about my music, that makes me happy, and I'm grateful.
Me too, if you're still listening. All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Take care, man.
Well, that was fun. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Chris. I enjoyed the hell out of it. He's such a nice guy. As an independent podcaster, your support means the world to me. You could even say I depend on it. And with that in mind, here are some things that can help you support us. Liner Notes. Liner Notes is an email newsletter from yours truly in which I share some of the best knowledge gems garnered from the many conversations featured on The Unstarving Musician. You can learn from the hundreds of musicians and industry professionals I've spoken with for The Unstarving Musician on topics such as marketing, songwriting, touring, sync licensing, and much more. You'll also be privy to the latest podcast episodes and Liner Notes subscriber exclusives. You can sign up at unstarvingmusician.com. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. Then there is our crowd sponsor page. If you just can't bear the idea of signing up for yet another email, you can also visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the other ways of supporting the podcast, including a quick and easy online tip jar. Click tip done. Easy and super appreciated. You can also follow, review, or share the episode. If you enjoy today's episode or you already love the podcast, follow us on your favorite podcast app, leave a review on your favorite podcast app, or shoot a review to me by email at robonzo@unstarvingmusician.com that I can use on the website, or just share this episode with a friend. That would be amazing. Lastly, Bandzoogle. If you want to boost your online presence and support this podcast, you can visit bandzoogle.com and use the promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. How does this help? Bandzoogle pays us a small commission if you sign up for a paid plan, and that's at no extra cost to you. I use Bandzoogle for my artist website, robonzo.com, and the way that it helps me easily manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales with features like its commission-free store is nothing short of greatness. Again, that's bandzoogle.com, promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO. New Gods Part 2. That's the music you're hearing right now and you heard at the beginning of this episode. It's the instrumental mix. It was written by yours truly and Peter Rand. You can hear and download and or stream the full version with the vocals included by yours truly at robonzo.com. And if all that was way too much to remember or process, just go to the show notes for this episode at unstarvingmusician.com to find links to all this and the stuff I talked about in today's episode. Thanks for listening. With a whole lot of love and gratitude.